Facebook is back online after a crippling global outage yesterday. It's about to get much more expensive to heat your home this winter, and Russia beats the U.S. in sending an actor to space. Tom Cruise, you're up next. Tuesday Need to Know. Let's go. Good morning, gang. This is Cheddar's Need to Know podcast for October 5. I am Carlo Versano here once again with Baker Machado.
Ooh.
Baker, good to see you.
Yes, I secretly got Jill sick so I could stay in again, Carlo, for the podcast because you know how much I love this. But always good to see you, my man.
Good to see you too. I actually talked to Jill last night. She's feeling much better.
That's good.
But she's in COVID protocol now, so she's got to throw a negative test in order to get back into the office. That's how these things go now.
Oh gosh.
Right? So, yeah.
Wait, was this whole was I haven't been able to talk to her. Was this all a COVID thing? That's why she's
No. She didn't think that it's COVID. I don't think there is any reason to believe that it's COVID. I think it's just, the policies now at all of these companies, ours included, is that you have to, when you're sick, you have to throw a negative test to sort of get let back into work. So that's what she's got to do today.
How interesting. It's funny. In 5 years working at this network, I've only called in sick one time, and it was because I got Montezuma's revenge when I came back from Mexico.
Oh.
It was literally impossible for me to leave the bathroom one day.
Oh, how pleasant. Well, thank you for that, Baker.
Yes, I love a good cheery story early in the morning, Carlos. So let's talk about some of the big headlines that we're following today. And I'm sure most of us noticed this yesterday. Facebook services now mostly back online after almost 6 hours yesterday of a global outage that affected nearly half of the world's population. Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, Messenger, Oculus, all knocked offline around noon Eastern time yesterday. That was due to a networking issue. Now, it wasn't until the company got a team to its physical data servers in California 5 hours later that their apps started to flicker back on for about 3.5 billion users. The outage was so widespread, it even caused Facebook's own employees to be locked out of the offices yesterday. Carlo, I was reading tweets from the New York Times where some of their tech reporters were basically saying that their badges, they couldn't even get into the building to get, because their badges would not let them in because of the outage.
When I read the headline last night about how they had to send a team to turn the servers back on, I thought about that scene in Jurassic Park when Laura Dern has to go get manually turn the electric fences back on.
Yes. You go do it. It's only a Tyrannosaurus. Please go do it.
But in all seriousness, look, this was, first of all, this could not have happened at a worse time for Facebook, given all the scrutiny that they're under. And it shows you a bunch of things, right? First of all, if nothing else, what this should show you is that Facebook needs to divest WhatsApp. If nothing else. WhatsApp is such an important of all of its services. WhatsApp is the one that so many people rely on. Becky's one of them. WhatsApp is how she speaks to her parents. Mm-hmm. So she wasn't able to have her normal conversation with the baby and her mom yesterday because of that. In South Asia, it's basically the internet. That's how most people communicate with each other. WhatsApp. So it's just that's one of those services I think is just too important for it to be under the purview of Facebook at this point. And it also just shows you, the thing that I was thinking about as this was happening, this centralization of the internet, right? There was this old adage that, the internet would survive a nuclear attack because of how decentralized it was. But that's just not true anymore. It just shows you, right? Facebook, several companies control so much of the underlying infrastructure of the internet that when they have a problem, it affects this many people. And it just highlights how integral Facebook services have become to the internet. And again, as I said, as that company is under all this scrutiny, Facebook's whistleblower, that woman, Frances Haugen, she's set to testify to Congress today for the first time. So no doubt this will come up as well.
Also, on top of that, literally, it was like a perfect storm of terrible news for Facebook yesterday. The FTC amended their complaint against Facebook, claiming anti-competitive behavior because of the purchases of WhatsApp and Instagram. Yeah. That happened yesterday also for exactly the same reason that you just mentioned, that a company like Facebook should not have their hands on so many different platforms for if in the event something happens and they all go down, you don't experience a situation like we did yesterday.
Exactly.
It was interesting though also, Carla, because it was trending on Twitter, and you have to think everybody on Twitter and TikTok were loving this yesterday, because I saw on Twitter so many times How have you been enjoying the great Facebook blackout of 2021? How does it feel to have your life finally back after the Facebook blackout, where you essentially take Facebook out of your life for these 6 hours? You can't do anything on it. What did you basically do back with your life once you got those 6 hours back? It just goes to show that if you're online, how much you're using these platforms, which is just so crazy.
I bet you productivity soared yesterday around the country.
I was organizing my closet yesterday. I cleaned the floors. It was honestly, it was great.
I wrote the great American novel.
Yes, exactly. Carlo, let's go down under Australia, considering allowing international tourists into the country next year. That following the announcement that the country's strict travel ban will start to ease next month. Australia has been more or less closed off to the world since March of 2020, and their residents have been enduring some of the strictest lockdown measures anywhere. In neighboring New Zealand, the government there giving up on its zero COVID strategy, that in the face of the Delta variant, moving to a contain and control approach that will require residents to have vaccine passports for most public events. I know when it comes to New Zealand, and Jacinda Ardern, the prime minister there, has basically put in some of the most strict policies when it comes to COVID. There would be one COVID case, and they would lock the whole country down. But that's also, as a result, why you saw the numbers when we were having the worst surges here in the United States. You would see Australia and New Zealand, they're still going out partying, having a good time because they had no COVID cases back then.
Yeah. I mean, the zero COVID approach that she was doing, it was never going to work. It was especially never going to work with the Delta variant. It's just that you can't keep something like this out. I mean, in the very beginning, I sort of understood the very strict lockdowns that they were doing down there. But as vaccinations ramp up, I don't think you can put people under that kind of duress for this long. I've sort of changed my tune on that. Meanwhile, back here, the CDC has put out its holiday guidelines for our third Christmas season.
I think probably almost feels like the third at this point. Yeah.
Yes. So the CDC once again telling people to consider virtual celebrations. No, not going to do it. Sorry. I'm vaccinated, as is everybody I know. And once again, I will be celebrating Thanksgiving and Christmas in person because I no longer am going to live my life scared of this freaking virus, especially because, once again, the vaccination rates are high where I live and nobody I know is unvaccinated. But I'll just say it again, Baker, because we said it last week, and I want to get on the record with this. The picture is rapidly getting better in this country. Cases continuing to go down.
Yes.
Hospitalizations going down.
Yes.
Deaths are going down. They're still too high, and there's still some serious hotspots, especially up in sort of Montana, North Dakota, Idaho, Alaska. But here, it's much better.
Look, we're still averaging about 1,500 deaths per day. Again, that's less than the 2,000 we had for a few months straight for most of the summer. We're still averaging over 100,000 new cases every single day, albeit that is down 30% over the last 2 weeks. And to your point about Christmas, I mean, this has been a big talking point in conservative news circles on Fox News, other places, because Dr. Fauci was asked over the weekend what would be the guidance for the holidays, and he didn't feel comfortable really at this particular point giving any sort of advice. Given the fact, or saying that people should do Christmas and the holidays right now, given the fact, especially Carlo, Thanksgiving and Christmas were really tumultuous in this country because we had the worst months in the winter when it came to deaths in the totality of the pandemic because people were gathering during the holidays. But conservatives seized on that, saying that Fauci's trying to cancel Christmas and all of this sort of stuff, when that's not really directly what he had said. But look, you're right. We're now in the Delta variant, in the sense, has gone down significantly. And the fact that the vaccination rates continue to tick up, we're still getting close to about 500,000 new vaccines per day that are people are being inoculated. Even though we're not basically at the new normal like Joe Biden wanted in July the 4th, all intents and purposes, we could hit that 70% vaccine rate maybe by the new year, which is still incredibly good, which basically gives us the idea that starting next year, we will have some semblance of our lives back. And a lot of offices believe that as well, which is why some companies are now pushing that January 1st sort of reopening date for a lot of these companies.
Yeah, just one more thing on what Fauci was saying. The problem with when Fauci comes out and says stuff like that, and I understand, he's trying to be cautious, and he's a public health official, and they are cautious by nature. But he's speaking to the choir. I mean, the people who potentially shouldn't actually gather for Thanksgiving or Halloween or whatever. Those aren't the people who are taking his advice, right? So what it ends up having the effect of people just being like, oh, okay, this is just going to go on forever. When in fact, what we need to be telling people is this is going to be, and almost is, frankly, an endemic virus that you have to learn to live with. It's going to be in the background of our lives for a long period of time.
Very good point. Let's talk politics now. President Biden going on the road to sell his economic agenda as his two legislative pillars remain in limbo back in D.C. Biden heading to a swing district in Michigan today to promote some of the proposals that are being negotiated that are popular amongst large swaths of the public, such as the expanded child care and the shovel-ready infrastructure products that are out there as well, Carlo.
He's also going to Chicago later this week. I think they're probably going to put more travel on his schedule in the coming days,
yes.
Which is,
I
think it's smart. Yeah, it's smart politically. He's got to get, the sausage making is nobody cares, right? People just turn it off when they hear about the sort of like behind the scenes negotiations in Washington. What he has to do politically is get out there and be like, these are the things that will make your life better if these bills pass. And that's what he's finally going to do. The White House also starting to turn the screws on Republicans over the impending debt ceiling, the deadline for credit default in this country fast approaching. I think about 2 weeks from now, we will default on our debt if that debt ceiling is not raised. Biden calling Senate Republicans, quote, hypocritical, dangerous, and disgraceful for not raising the debt ceiling. Jen Psaki at the press briefing yesterday noting that Republicans spent like, quote, drunken sailors when President Trump was in office. And now all of a sudden, they turned into deficit hawks, which is something I've been saying.
Well, so to your point about Joe Biden going out and selling this, again, it still has to get passed. October the 31st potentially is the new deadline, even though Joe Manchin is even trying to put the brakes on that, saying, listen, we maybe have to go at this maybe next year, which progressives are not going to be interested in that because next year, you're in midterm.
Nothing's getting done next year.
Because everybody's in campaign mode in preparation for the midterms, and this potentially would lose out, any momentum for Joe Biden to get this passed. But look, Barack Obama was heavily criticized in 2010 for those midterms that he didn't go out and sell the popular parts of Obamacare and the Affordable Care Act, and as a result, Republicans took 63 House seats back those midterms and made his life a living hell for the rest of his presidency as a result of that. So Democrats trying not to repeat some of the same mistakes that Obama made back then. Remember, Carlo, when there was so little demand for oil during the height of the lockdowns that crude prices briefly went negative? Well, now crude trading at its highest level since 2014. Natural gas up 150% over the last year. Even coal now at a 2-year high. A combination of factors creating a global energy crunch that's now sending prices soaring at the worst possible time for consumers just before the heating bills, Carlo, start to come in here soon.
Yeah, this is something we've been covering and we will continue to cover because this is going to be a big story this winter. In the UK, they've got the army out delivering fuel to petrol stations there. That has more to do, I believe, with Brexit and just sort of the lack of drivers that they can get into that country with all of the new Brexit rules than any of these other issues that we're facing. OPEC, by the way, yesterday declining to significantly boost oil supply, which ended up sending crude oil to $80 a barrel. All of this just puts Biden in sort of this awkward position of basically having to call on foreign oil producers like OPEC to increase supply while at the same time being back home and telling Congress that they have to get serious about climate change and renewable energy, right? Because we are still highly, highly dependent on fossil fuels, even, though we're becoming less so by the day. But
look, at the pump, at the wallet, all those sorts of things that impact consumers, that basically could have really negative ramifications for whomever is in power coming into the midterm. So if people are seeing the effects at the gas station, seeing the effects for their heating and oil bills, that usually spells doom for whomever usually is in power.
Well, I think that is the bigger thing that Democrats have to worry about in the midterms than the Biden's legislation, frankly.
I agree. Inflation, all that.
That's why people vote. People vote people out of office if they're realizing that everything is more expensive, even if it's not necessarily those people's fault.
Such a good point. Let's move here to Wall Street, Carlo, where tech stocks led a broad stock market decline to start the full trading week of October. Shares at Amazon, oh God, really rough couple days for Amazon. Facebook, Google, all closing lower by more than 2%. We were talking about Facebook. They were down 5% in the midst of their outage. Amazon, in the midst of their worst losing streak they've been seeing since 2019, they're now negative for the year. Amazon, I believe, is down for the last 6 days straight. The broader market has been having a really rough autumn, that after an incredibly bullish summer, Carlo.
Especially Amazon was up 75% in 2020, and now it's a total dog. The first sustained dip we're seeing for all of those retail investors who put money into stocks during the pandemic, right? All of these sort of the people who got into the meme stock trading, got Robinhood accounts. It's a good lesson, right? Stocks don't just go up, kids. They eventually go down. But Robinhood, I saw something yesterday from Apptopia, which is one of those like app tracking services. They put out data showing that downloads of Robinhood, Charles Schwab, E-Trade, Coinbase, all of those sort of trading platforms that became very popular during COVID, all are seeing their app downloads fall significantly, which I think shows you that some of the shine, I guess, is off of a lot of these retail investors who put money in now that they're seeing, the stocks go down.
Yeah, really interesting, Carlo. Let's move now to Hollywood. Tens of thousands of members of the crew union voted to authorize an industry-wide strike that potentially can shut down film and television production nationwide very soon. More than 98% of IATSE members voted yes, and 90% of a turnout happened in this. Incredible numbers, giving leverage to the union as it negotiates a new contract with the studios. Now, Carlo,
For those who do not know this particular union, they represent a lot of the people behind the stage. We're talking costume design, editors, grip members, production people on the floor, all of this stuff. And one of my friends in Hollywood, who is a costume designer for a major studio, he is part of this union that is striking here, and it is all about streaming. This is the 100% the reason why the streaming is basically the cause of all of this.
Yeah, I was talking to a couple family members over the weekend who work in the industry, and there are people who work on the studio side of things. So I sort of thought that they were going to be kind of like wary of the demands of these workers coming from that side rather than the side of like the crew members. But it was actually the complete opposite. These people both talked about, to your point, a lot of these off-screen production people are still working under contracts that were negotiated way before the streaming era, right? When they were working on maybe a 13-episode series, and then they got a break, and then they did another one. Now they're doing like 2 or 3 at the same time. So, all actors, directors, some of the big name producers, they were able to renegotiate their deals for sort of the Netflix era. But a lot of these back of the house guys, the makeup folks, the set designers, the grips, as you mentioned, they've still been sort of working under conditions from, an era that no longer exists, which I think, and just given the numbers that you talked about with this strike, I mean, 98% on 90% turnout, that's a lot of leverage. Huge. And I think that means the studios are going to come back and they're going to get a deal done, I would say, probably soon.
I worked in Hollywood during the writer's strike, and that was crippling for the industry because everything was delayed as a result of that. And that wasn't even in the streaming era. Now you have these streamers that want as much content as humanly possible. The problem is, as you mentioned, all these crew members are working under contracts for like a show that's on ABC or a show that would be on NBC, not a show that would be on Hulu or Peacock. And so as a result of this, they're getting paid less, they're working more, they're working weekends, they're basically not even making living wages on a lot of these deals. So this is what in many ways Scarlett Johansson sort of opened the door here, is essentially saying, look, for these production studios, you need to basically negotiate deals in a new sort of entertainment world that we live in now. You can no longer essentially, in a streaming world now, you basically have to pay us to do all these streaming shows instead of just doing the traditional old school ways of a broadcast or cable show that traditionally they were doing.
Did you see, by the way, that ScarJo settled with Disney over that big suit?
Yes.
Woo. Disney settled real quick. They did not want that going out.
No, they don't want. I think Discovery would have been really difficult for Disney during that legal process there. And the last thing you want if you're Disney is having a huge ongoing legal battle with an A-list celebrity, because every A-list celeb is watching that and then is like, do I want to work with Disney as a result of something like that? Carlo, let's stay with.
ScarJo's lawyer got a nice beach house out of that.
I'm sure. I'm
lawsuit,
sure.
Right?
Look, she claims she lost $50 million in all of this. If you're Disney, $50 million is, you find that under the couch cushions a lot of times. So
exactly.
if you can, you settle and you just get this over with. All right, let's stay with the movie space. Russia beat the U.S., Carlo, in sending a movie star to space. A Russian actress and movie director was just launched into orbit where they'll shoot scenes for a feature film that aboard the International Space Station. Now, this will be the first time a movie is shot in space, but probably not the last. Tom Cruise also working on a big budget action flick that is supposed to shoot aboard the ISS as well. The only thing I find to be interesting about this, which by the way, Tom Cruise does all of his own stunts, which is still to this day incredible that he does that, because nobody in Hollywood does that. The CGI and the production has gotten so good, I almost wonder if it's better not going to space, because you're crammed in the ISS and this tiny little area. What sort of shots are you going to be able to get that you wouldn't be able to sort of generate anyway down here on planet Earth?
Oh, I bet it will be good. If Kubrick were alive, I bet you he'd be up there. Tom Cruise, by the way, I'm a huge Tom Cruise fan, a TC head as we call ourselves. Yeah. I'll see anything that he is in, and I will absolutely pay money to see a movie that he shoots aboard the International Space Station. So
totally.
The sooner he can get up there, the better. By the way, not to be outdone, Captain Kirk himself taking off for the great beyond. 90-year-old William Shatner. He's going to become the oldest person to go to space when he hitches a ride on the Blue Origin's next scheduled suborbital flight, which I believe is scheduled for about a week from now on October 12th. A week from today. So that'll be impressive.
First,
90 years old.
First it was Wally Funk, and now it is William Shatner, great Captain Kirk. That is going to be amazing to see him finally go to the great beyond here, Carlo.
Very cool. Okay, let's do some quick more to know before we go.
Yes, indeed. Let's start here. A DEA agent killed last night, Carlo, in a shooting on an Amtrak train in Arizona. Now, 2 other law enforcement officers also injured here. The gunman was also killed. No word yet on a possible motive here.
It's still developing overnight. We've got to keep an eye on that today. Over in Missouri, they are going to put a severely mentally disabled man to death today in spite of pleas of clemency from the Pope himself. Ernest Lee Johnson was sentenced to death for a triple murder he committed back in 1994. Last month, the Missouri Supreme Court ruled that Johnson is not, as he claims, intellectually disabled, even though he clearly is. They denied his request for execution by firing squad based on his claim that death by lethal injection would cause severe pain.
Let's move to Southern California. Officials there, Carlo, investigating whether the anchor of one of those dozens of container ships lined off the coast may have accidentally hit an oil pipeline that caused that huge spill that happened. Oil continues to wash ashore in Huntington Beach, Newport, and Laguna beaches right now, Carlo.
An investigation into sex abuse in the French Catholic Church found that an estimated 216,000 French children were abused by clergy members dating back to 1950. The investigation finding that the church, in some cases, knowingly put those kids in touch with known predators in its ranks, which, of course, is a familiar aspect of some of the other sex abuse scandals that have rocked the church now for going on 20 years.
Oh, just awful news, Carlo. Meanwhile, good news. A single winning ticket sold for last night's $700 million Powerball jackpot. The ticket was bought in Morro Bay, California. Now, no word yet on the lucky winner, but my goodness, that person's going to have a very good next couple days.
Maybe not. Don't they say that lottery winners are the people who are like most at risk of severe depression and suicide? I don't know.
I've never heard that. I've heard random stories where people spend almost all of it very quickly soon. So.
And finally, if you're a Billions fan, this was big news yesterday. Spoiler here. Damian Lewis confirming to the New York Times yesterday that he is not coming back to that show, Billions on Showtime, the series where he famously plays Bobby Axelrod, the sort of high-flying hedge fund manager. Lewis lost his wife, the actress Helen McCrory, to cancer earlier this year, and that is why he says that he's not coming back to that show.
I have not watched Billions for the last couple seasons. The first one, awesome. Damian Lewis, amazing. He will always be, from Homeland for me. He's such an incredible actor. But from those who watched the finale of Billions, they say it's a really, really, really good finale.
I haven't watched that show in a couple seasons. I guess I should get back into it. Paul Giamatti is the man.
Yeah, he's the best. He's the best. And by the way, Andrew Ross Sorkin over at CNBC, he's the big writer on that show.
Yeah, he is. Okay, folks. Well, that is what you need to know for Tuesday, October 5th. Gang, Baker, good to see you.
Always
Thanks again,
a
my
pleasure.
friend. See you guys tomorrow.